aguardar pouquinho, doutor Desimone conectar. Ele está aqui conosco no nosso ambiente virtual.
Yes, I'm here.
Hello, hi, Dr. Desimone.
Hello.
Hello, hi. We are here live with Dr. Martin Desimone from University of Buenos Aires. He's here with us, spending a little bit of his time to answer some questions. And also, I want to thank you for your talk and to be an important part of our Congress and for being here with us today. It's a pleasure to have you here. Your talk was amazing. The talk you choose for your lecture is something I usually do in the lab, and it's something I really enjoy doing. So for me, was extra special. So I hope everyone liked it like I did. So we have some questions here, and we start from the first one. Is from Luciano. Luciano asked, what are the benefits of biogenic synthesis of nanomaterials using biological materials such as plants and microorganisms, and how this sustainable approach be applied in different fields such as biomedical applications and stimuli-responsive materials?
Well, there are different aspects that we can mention in this question. It's very good question because it can give us the opportunity to discuss different topics. For example, with the biogenic synthesis, using plant extracts, microorganisms, or different systems, nowadays you can add some biological molecules to your synthesis, and you can avoid the use of toxic chemicals during the synthesis. You can avoid use a lot of energy consuming processes. So from a point of view of the environment, it's a very interesting aspect to go through this new synthesis, because now a lot of work is being done in this direction. It's important also because we can prepare, for example, silver nanoparticles and add these nanoparticles to a scaffold and prepare a wound healing material to avoid infection and to contribute to the wound healing process. You know, the infections are one of the main reasons that can affect the healing of a wound, for example. And if we can prepare silver nanoparticles because they have antimicrobial activity and add these nanoparticles to this material, for example, to a collagen scaffold. But instead of using a traditional synthesis procedure, we can employ toxic chemicals and also generate some waste that we must take care about it, and they can impact in the environment. We can obtain the same nanoparticles through a biogenic process. So this is more eco-friendly. And also these nanoparticles can keep, as I mentioned in the presentation, some molecules that are also interesting for wound healing, for example. In this sense, I can mention some molecules with antioxidant activity that can contribute. We made some work also with extracts of cannabis sativa. They have some anesthetic effects. So there are different molecules that can also contribute to the effect of the nanoparticles. So in that sense, it's also very good to go through this type of synthesis. And the applications are very huge because nanoparticles have huge application. I mentioned recently one in the field of biomedical application, but it's also interesting that biogenic synthesis can allow to produce nanostructure with different porosity, surface, that maybe with traditional synthesis procedure is not possible to achieve. So if you obtain a highly porous materials with a very huge surface area, this is also very interesting as a catalysis system. It's also very interesting as a drug delivery system because you can transport more molecules or more therapeutic molecules also.
Thank you for your answer. We have another question here from Vera Lucia Pedro-Cipoles. She asked how to solve the problem, the challenge of reproducibility in the synthesis of nanoparticles using biogenic synthesis.
Well, this is a very challenging. It's something that must be carefully analyzing when developing this kind of methods, because there is not only the variability during the synthesis of your material, but you have some variability, for example, in the plant that you are going to use. So this must be taken into account, and there is a strong work at the beginning of the development of the method to obtain a validated procedure to be applied for the synthesis.
Thank you very much for your question. Another question from Luciano is, what's the main challenges and considerations regarding the use of eco-friendly synthesized nanomaterials, in particular in relation to their application in the degradation of toxic substances and the potential toxicological risks associated with them?
Well, I didn't listen very well the last, but I think I catch it, the idea. Then, Andre, please tell me if I missed something. But these particles, as I mentioned, you can obtain different structures with different porosities. So if you, depending on the mechanisms of the degradation of the toxic molecules that you are going to use your particles, in general, it's better to have a material with a high surface area because this is will interact with your molecules. For example, they can be some electron transfer or some redox mechanisms. So it's important to have materials with big surface area, and some porosity also is important in that direction.
Thank you. One question I have is thinking about the scalability. Do you think that with the biogenic synthesis, is that possible to have products in large scale, or it's an issue that we have to think for the future?
Well, I think that there are different parameters that can be used to scale up the synthesis. For example, if you are going to use a plant extract, you can validate the antioxidant activity of your material previous of the synthesis, the amount of polyphenols, or the amount of different molecules that are important for the synthesis. So you can standardize this amount before starting the synthesis. So you can decide this, well, we will start every time with this characteristic of the plant extract before starting the synthesis.
Thank you. Another question here from Juliana Matos. She said, good afternoon. How to get a good encapsulation efficiency in dimetallic green synthesis? Could ICP-OES give me this answer, or is there another piece of equipment?
Well, I don't know which kind of molecule you mean for encapsulation. In maybe if it is about the amount of particles that you are obtaining and you want to know how efficient is your reaction in bimetallic or metallic particles, this technique is very good. Yes. atomic absorption spectroscopy or this ICP obviously is very good.
Thank you. Another question.
It's also interesting because you can also analyze the release of ions from these particles with this kind of techniques.
Great. Thank you again. Another question from Nadia Nascimento. She said, good afternoon. Thank you for your lecture. You mentioned silver nanoparticle toxicity for fish, but what about humans?
Well, there are also some studies about the toxicity of silver nanoparticles also for humans. In the case of humans, it's very important to know which is the way in which the organism is going to be exposed to these kind of particles. There are not, I cannot mention studies in humans, but for example, in some animals, there are studies, and they study what happens if the animals absorbed nanoparticles and they get deposited in the lungs, and then it can affect also the heart and different parameters. The nanoparticles can interact with cells of the immune system also, depending on different parameters such as size, surface area, chemistry. They can produce an stimulation of the cells of the immune system and produce some cytokines, interleukins. They can produce the activation of monocytes, for example. So it's very complex.
Thank you. Another question from Luciano. What are the potential environmental impacts associated with the production and use of sustainable synthesized nanomaterials, and what measures are being taken to ensure safety and minimize potential risks to the environment?
Well, in recent years, what appears, and it's very interesting, or at least I think it's very interesting, is the concept of safety by design, in which you know which are the properties of the materials that you want to produce, which properties they need to have to accomplish a function. But it's also important to know that there are some characteristics that are highly important in terms of toxicity. So knowing which are the important properties and knowing which are those properties that you don't want in your material, you can use this concept of safety by design. This means that from the design of your material, you can establish which are the best properties for the material, making a balance between the benefits and the detrimental effects.
Thank you for your answer. Another question from Maria Gabriela. She said, hi, have you evaluated the influence of pH in the green synthesis? How do you choose the reagent used in order to change the pH, but controlling that the cations of the reagent do not form also nanoparticles? The use of any sodium hydroxide to change the pH, but for the synthesis of AGNPS.
Well, it's important to tune the pH. Indeed, this is one of the parameters that you must adjust during the synthesis and evaluate which is the best to obtain your nanomaterial, and which is well, of course, you must take into account what are you using to adjust the pH. There are different systems that you can use. For example, if you are going to work with silver, you cannot use chloride, for example, or something like that. So There are some incompatibilities, but that's why you must analyze which material is going to form your nanoparticles, and with that information you can choose which is the best system to adjust the pH to avoid interactions that you don't want. You only want to add something to adjust the pH in this case.
Well, I think we don't have any more questions, but we would like no more questions. Thank you very much, Dr. Desimone, for your time here, for your lecture, to be part of our Congress. Everything was great, and we hope meet someday in the future. Thank you very much.
Well, Andre, and thank you very much for the invitation. It's something really great what you are doing. I was listening to the previous conferences. It was a very nice, very interesting meeting. I think you can make you are making a great impact in this field. So it's very important what you are doing. So congratulations to all and to all the organization. And I tell you, Andre, but it's for all the team.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.